Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome back to the Liberal Artists Podcast. I'm your host, Bodio, and with me I have Kaylie Horowitz.
Hello.
And Andy Gibby Gibson.
Turkey Day.
If they could if they could put up their Christmas decorations at the beginning of November, then I can keep mine up until December. We're jumping right into it. We're talking about the scary shit. Cabinet of Curiosities Part 2.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Let's get spooky.
My 12-foot tall skeleton hasn't left my lawn.
I've seen somebody dress theirs up as a turkey, and I think that's one of the best things you could do for your all year round 12-foot skeleton purposing.
All right.
Hell fucking yeah.
So last time we stopped at episode 5, Pikmin's Model.
Pikmin's model.
It's
Eldritch
garbage.
Horror.
It's garbage. It's not good. We're here on the second of the H.P. Lovecraft short stories, which is slightly better, but still stupid. The Dreams in the Witch House.
You and Howard just really wouldn't have gotten along for a number of reasons.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons.
You know,
Is
I'd
his
like
name,
to see...
Hold on. Gibby, hold on. Is his first name Howard?
I don't know. Kaylee's the one that said
I
it.
believe so. If I am remembering my
Fuck this
my
dude.
This
history
bitch is named
correctly.
Howard.
Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
Yes,
Suck a
yes.
dick, Howard.
I was like, I remember the middle name is Philip, like very confidently. I couldn't remember first name, but yes.
Howie Lovecraft.
Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
Howie.
I was just in Providence, and he hated a lot of the buildings that are there, and we walked around and found his house that he lived the remainder of his life in, and a number of buildings that he went, this shit's haunted. This is weird as fuck.
Get dunked
Also,
on,
wife,
nerd.
His wife died in L.A.
She did. Sonia Green, God bless her. Don't know why she married that man. Like, I could go on about her. Ian wrote a play about them, and I love Sonia Green. She is an icon. How she lived with that man for more than a year is beyond me.
Like, how did he not end up writing, like, Eldritch Horror LA or anything like that, where he's just like, palm trees! Palm trees.
He didn't live long. He didn't live long enough to get out there.
No, he could have. He just didn't want to. He lived in New York with Sonia, and he went, I hate it here. I want to go back to Providence, Rhode Island. That tells you enough about him already. But Sonia was also a writer in science fiction interest, Pulp Spaces. They met at, I don't know if it was fully a convention or a conference or something. They met. They're both writers. They start chatting. They get married. She kind of is like, after a year and a half-ish, 2 years of that relationship, went, hey, this has been great. You are impossible. I'm fucking going. I'm going to LA. Here's the divorce papers. He never fucking signed them.
Yeah.
She got into a whole new relationship. She was trying to get married to this dude, and she was about to get like in
Nathaniel
serious
Davis.
trouble for still being married to Howard because he was still alive. She didn't know that he hadn't signed the papers.
Hilarious.
Like,
We're not giving him the dignity of his cool last name.
No,
he's Howard from
Howard
henceforth.
Phillip. Howard Phillip. He gets the
Howard
double name.
Phillip. Yeah,
Idiot.
suck it. You don't get the cool writer name. You're Howard Phillip from.
You know
now
who
on.
is cool? Rupert Grint.
yeah.
My man Ron
That was a very
Weasley.
pleasant surprise of casting to see for this. Like, I know some people were like waiting for this anthology series to come out, and I was just sort of like, all right, it's Guillermo del Toro, that's enough for me. And yeah, seeing that in the Netflix like starring Rupert Grint, like, what are you doing here?
I didn't know that he was like still on the acting game because like
every once in a while he pops up in things.
Yeah,
is my
I mean,
understanding.
He's very good.
he's great. He's got a ton of fucking money, and his only goal after, those wizard movies was to operate an ice cream truck.
I was about to say ice cream truck and then do whatever I want.
Yeah, he didn't even make it a business. He just gave out free ice cream to the kids of England.
But back to the discussion.
Anyway.
Yes. Kaylie, give us a quick synopsis of Dreams in the Witch House.
So again, it's Lovecraft. It's poor
Howard Phillip.
dude.
Howard
Phillip. Poor dude experiences mental turbulence of something that maybe is supernatural and he's just going crazy, or actually is supernatural and is still going crazy because of that. So in this case, I'm blanking on his name, but Rupert's character is kind of obsessively drawn back. Walter, yes, is drawn back to this memory, this very traumatic moment in time when his twin sister suddenly dies, and is very much convinced that he still kind of connects with her ghost, her spirit, her soul in some world trapped between the realms. She's not in hell, she's not in heaven, she's in some form of a purgatory, alternate ghost reality space. And because it's a Howard Phillips story, somebody of mysterious circumstance just happens to have a solution, perhaps, to the problem he's experiencing. And
excellent, good, thank you.
Dude starts tripping balls, going through and in and out of the ghost dimension
on liquid gold.
Yeah,
because a Native American man was just like, I'm gonna make some money off of this guy.
Again, another unfortunate HP signature is someone of quote unquote exotic or mystic means, has the spooky answers to your problems.
This man is just like, dude, my family's been here for thousands of years, longer than all of your asshole family has been here.
Yeah,
Incredible.
again, one of those moments where it's just that oh yeah.
So, first of all, talking about this story, I don't believe the name Epperly exists.
What do you mean?
I simply do not. I know this is, it begins in early 1900 stuff. I simply refuse to acknowledge the reality that somebody is named Epperly, especially because we hear
it's a nice name.
I mean, it's nice, but it's I've never heard that before, so you can't prove to me that it exists.
You're right.
Second of all,
quickly search the name history of Epperly.
Epperly is an alternative rock band active in the 1990s from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, it is.
Hell
there
yeah.
You go. Hell yeah, that's what they he resurrects an entire rock band that hasn't been born yet.
What if?
Can we play a quick snippet of an Epperly song and not get copyrighted? Probably not.
Editor Gibby, you have 15 seconds to play.
Hell yeah.
An alternate rock band.
Play Shy by Epperly for 15 seconds.
This is, I think, a standard and fairly good ghost story situation with what I would call an almost random and completely irrelevant ending.
And that was what I didn't like. First and foremost, you open with the hyper aggressive, super unattractive Cockney rat guy talking. There's a human faced rat running around who is just there because reasons.
Yeah.
Yep. And Jenkins Brown.
I didn't even realize he had a name. Doesn't get a backstory.
Exactly, because who gives a shit?
Yeah, doesn't get a backstory, doesn't get an explanation. He's just there. And maybe he gets a backstory written down. I don't know. It was stupid. And it cold opens with him talking. I turned off the episode. I went back. I finished this one.
Okay. That's something.
Very proud.
Immediately coming off of, it was the last Lovecraft story I got really frustrated by. I really didn't like it. Oh, this one's gonna have a happy ending. Whatnot? Off immediately.
With Rupert Grint dead on the floor.
Which isn't how the episode ended. He died in his bed.
Yeah.
consistency. That's such a nitpicky bullshit. I don't mean that.
But what is going on is through his connections to the spirit world and finding his sister's ghost, he also creates ripples, as they call it, throughout this world, and
We skip some steps.
essentially awakens the spirit of a witch that was executed hundreds of years before, known as Keziah Mason, who becomes
I forgot
the main
that name.
Yeah, she becomes the antagonist, the scary monster.
It's funnier that you had issue with the name Epperly, but not Keziah.
It's a witch. Who gives a fuck? Like, she can be named whatever she wants. Like
Keziah.
Yeah, sure, why not? But like, small post-Victorian Edwardian child, explain the origins of your name, you random ginger twin. Who are you? What is this?
Them fucking Weasley kids.
Here's the thing. Like, I think Keziah, from a design perspective and from a lore perspective, is an interesting one episode antagonist monster.
Sure.
Like, shout out to the makeup crew that's able to put her together, because you get the idea. This is a rotting, gnarled, evil spirit that might light on fire. Like, that's pretty cool. Cool design, cool powers and everything. And she's got a worm tongue, like as a sidekick, you know? She's got a beetle from Sweeney Todd. And the fact that fucking Jenkins Brown is apparently so important to get a twist ending after they've defeated the main villain, for him to take over the body of the now reanimated Walt, is just, why?
It feels cheap, right? Because
what's the point?
I want to talk about it later. But it's one of those quirks of horrors that death needs to happen to prove there are consequences to these things existing. And it feels like it forgot, right? It's like you wrote the story, you made a happy ending, you're like, oh wait, it can't end happy. Here. You know.
I mean, yeah, if you had Walt die of, magic exhaustion, whatever, and that's just it, then it's a tragic ending, but it's also a happy one, because he helped Epperly move on to the next world. Like, and that's it. He proves that ghosts and spirits are real to the Spiritualist Society and to his buddy. And also, like, he gets redemption before he dies. Who gives a fuck about Jenkins Brown?
No, and I also don't want to, like, what's the word? Coach quarterback, Monday morning coach this shit, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it just feels cheapened to have that whole story and then be like, and then the rat killed him, and then the rat possessed him and walked out of the house without anybody seeing him. It's like, word?
It's one of those situations where if you removed the entirety of Rat Boy, nothing would change. Where it's just like, this is an unnecessary element. Kaylie,
and like not having read the original short story, I don't know what was changed for a film script versus the original.
It's probably way more
material.
racist, because this is Howard Phillips we're talking about.
But what really did remind me of like the way that they chose to end it, because I similarly was in agreement of like, oh, I thought we were done with this. Why are we still here? Like, this is creepy as an idea. But that's how Howard works. Half of his stories actually like make some sense as far as like how it, like, the beats feel and how they leave you feeling by the end of it, whether it's a satisfying or an unsatisfying, it makes sense. Or the other half of the time, it's just, and isn't that fucking terrifying? Like, isn't that just a scary thing? No logic, no explanation, just this paranoid xenophobe writing his fears through abstract horror fiction. Because it really reminded me of Cool Air, which is an entire short story about how a man living in an apartment nearby, somebody who moves into a building, doesn't realize until the air conditioning, because at the time it was the 20s, air conditioning was a scary new thing.
Yeah.
The radiator kicks in.
When the power is cut, they hadn't realized that this man has been dead for months and the cool air was what was keeping his body from decomposing. Like, it reminded me of that, just sort of the like twist of the dead that are supposed to be dead are being reanimated by something, and that's terrifying, that bodies can be used against the person's will and carried on in some form. Like, it's something that he touches on in a number of places, but it feels weird after spending all of that time on these other more like spiritual experience and the other realm crossing over into the real. It felt a little like it cheapened it to me in some ways of just, and then moving corpse, rat man. Whoa.
Yeah. Like, I don't think we have much else to say. I will say I did enjoy this exponentially more than Pikmin's.
Yeah.
Just because the motivation made sense to me. Walter had spent his entire life just wanting to see his sister again, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's why he's going through all this shit, right?
There are satisfying elements to it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fine story. I think the ending is dog shit. It doesn't stick the landing, but
I was gonna say, I think I really enjoy the way they were able to land the plot structure, even though they changed some things from the original for Pikmin's model. But I think I liked the whys and the whos more of Dreams in the Witch House, even though I feel like that this was a script that needed a little tweaking and reordering when it gives us what exposition or other information.
No.
And shout out to like Rupert Grint, a British man by birth who is actually like doing like a decent Boston accent after going through an entire episode.
It wasn't
decent.
like always there, but it was pretty good.
Look, decent is exponentially better than so you can see the dark spirits too.
Yeah.
Dreams in the Witch House. Pretty solid. 6.5 out of 10. Kicks Pikmin's ass.
Yep.
Episode 7. The Viewing.
Moving right along.
Okay, so this episode is funny because
Eric Andre's in it.
Because Eric Andre's in a serious role. Number one, Eric Andre plays like a real person, which I had never seen before. Good for him.
Right? Yeah. I kept waiting for him to say bird up.
And number two, this was the episode where you definitely go, oh, what happened to the budget?
But I think that speaks to this idea of like 70s weird retro vintage.
And it is the most fucking 70s property I have ever watched in my entire life.
Yeah.
Everything about it, from cinematography to pacing to dialogue to lighting, and reveal of horror. This is the most fucking 1970s thing I've ever seen, for the best and worst aspects of the
So, Gibby, give us a quick synopsis of The Viewing.
A wealthy asshole is just like, hey, the best people to figure out this alien rock that I got with my exponential fortune? How about I get like a pop book writer, Quincy Jones stand-in, a guy who can bend spoons, and also somebody that makes sense in an astrophysicist. Hey, by the way, I'm sure this will have no repercussions of us messing with it after we drink booze, smoke cigarettes, smoke weed, snort cocaine that's been mixed with pills. I'm the smartest man alive. What do you mean the alien has melted all of my friends and taken over my body? Man,
so yeah, this episode, it's to be nicer than Gibby, I guess. 1970s recluse millionaire invites all these people over to talk philosophy with them for how long is the episode? 50 odd minutes.
It's 50 minutes, and they're talking for at least 35.
Oh yeah,
dude,
no, it's a very like philosophy talk heavy script.
It's the box
which was really
episode.
exciting.
I disagree.
I'm excited by that as opposed to other like a lot of the other episodes that we've gotten so far where it's very visual horror vehicles. I was because I didn't know what to think of this for the first like 20 minutes, and then we just kept going. And I'm like, okay, no, honestly, I'm getting a little creeped out because we're not doing anything like scary. We're doing things that are very out of the ordinary and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But like, I don't, it built up fear and suspense in a different way for a while before then being like, okay, and then here's your like John Carpenter kind of like, it's a thing, we don't know what it is.
And it's about to hit the big city. Catch him on Broadway.
I had the opposite experience, Kaylie, where, and I'm gonna repeat this when we get to the last episode. This is a story. This is two stories mashed into one. It's I guess very generic. Y'all said 70s. I guess so. I'm not familiar with that era in
I don't know if it
70s,
ever
80s.
actually confirms
It's
like
1979.
when we are. Is it
1979?
Okay,
Yeah.
I can't remember.
But it I guess it's a quote love letter to that kind of stuff in this jarring,
It has to be.
violent orange lighting that I hated. But
conversation pit, bright orange lights.
But that's the thing though. There's the LOL alien face melting haha part of it, and then the first 40 minutes of it, which is these different people from different philosophies for the most part expounding what they believe and why they believe it and their experiences, which the first half of that story I find so much more interesting than the last 10%, 20% of it, right? To the point to, and then an alien melts the face off of everybody at the end.
Except for Eric Andre, who's just like, I'm freaking out, man.
Eric Andre and
the astrophysicist.
Charlene Yee. It bothered me because it felt like it was so it felt so unnecessary, right? Fucking one dude face melts like, oh, I get it, it's fucking Indiana Jones, and then it's probing me, like, dude, and then the pretty lady has figurative sex with the thing, and then her face melts because it has to. And like, brother, it felt so contrived, and I hate using that word.
It's a love letter, but like, it's not much else, is what it feels like. It's kind of in the vein of like, well, they did it, so we have to. Well,
not even that. I just feel like this shouldn't have been a horror story. Because again, the first 40 minutes, it felt different. Like, it was so violently different. Like, it was very much so like, this is the box we sit down and talk to each other episode. But I liked it. I think the dialogue was really interesting. I think the idea that this weird guy is peer pressuring people to take drugs. And that's what I thought the pool was, because, you know, these are obviously all intelligent people. It's like, oh, he's drugging them up, he's inebriating them, and then he'll be able to manipulate them and do whatever he wants. This little scary shit. No, aliens just show up, which feels cheap.
Yeah,
you know?
it's that, like, he is obviously the rich guy who made it big early and thinks because of that he's on par with like
money will protect me somehow.
Throw some money at the alien, it's fine.
Well, I don't even think that's what it is. I think it's somebody who's high off their own product.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting.
Hubris.
To.
Yeah, sort
exactly.
Of overconfidence.
He doesn't have the hubris, but he does sincerely want to understand these people and have them be a part of his aesthetic,
everything.
Right? which I thought was going to translate to, oh, he's going to do something nefarious with like their blood or their
right. No, I thought it was a manipulation tactic at first too, because it's like we're doing rounds, like we're getting more progressively like have a drink, smoke some weed, snort some crack,
snort magic coke, and you're like, whoa,
like
it was designed by my vaguely Eastern European doctor here,
right? Which is a much cooler story. Shout outs to my boy, what's the driver? I forget his name. I think it was Charles.
I think
his name also might have been Howard.
Let's go with Charles.
When they ask him about the gun and he doesn't get to say anything, and then he gets the room to himself and he just starts playing music. I'm like, that dude's my boy.
And he gets to shoot the golden AK.
Yeah, and then he just gets rocked.
Well, yeah, but like he's what we call a Bob. Like he's a cool sidekick who's going to get killed by the end of it, just like Bob in Batman 1989. It's just the way it goes.
Hold on.
You know what? He's the star
Hector.
of the show. Give him that
Hector
name.
is his
Hector.
name. Hector Saad Siddiqui, I believe. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. You're my fucking dude. You're awesome.
I'm sorry I can't say your name, but I love you.
No, you're the best.
He does, in fact, rule.
Yeah.
I think it would be more interesting, you know, for it to be a manipulation thing. Like, what if it's like he drugs them up so that he can, with this like alien rock, create a mind meld or something and put all of their minds into his own so that he becomes, in his idea, like the super mind or something.
Like I was waiting for it to be a like, oh, you have to be your senses have to be heightened to access the beyond that I have seen. Like that's what I thought it was going for.
It kind of turns into like the autopsy at that point, where it's like body horror.
Which that's kind of what I was waiting for. Like we spend all that time discussing philosophy, worldview, who's in opposition to who and why, while progressively like getting more and more into like deeper shit as far as the substances that they're consuming. That I was thinking, okay, and by the time we've reached critical mass, everyone in this room is going to be like vulnerable or exposed in some way because they've done this to themselves. Like that's the tap in that either he or this creature needs to get them.
Like he keeps going on and on about all of his world travel, and he's just like, this particular whiskey can only be made in a single river in Japan. Like he's a world traveler and he's pretentious, so like he like is probably thinking something along the lines of like, I've been all around this world, I've seen everything it has to offer, and now there's something from beyond this world. Yeah, you know? And I think that's just
I'm going to the one place uncorrupted by capitalism. Spies.
And then
I just
you
think
melt.
I think it's just so much more interesting than like big shoulder prong lightning gooey monster, you know?
Yeah.
Like there was room for it to be more interesting than like generic rocks fall, most people die.
Well, and I think what I was so excited by, like kind of after coming off of two H.P. Lovecraft stories back to back, and then getting this, it took me a while to kind of recalibrate and understand like how I was supposed to be reacting or vibing or not vibing. And it really did. It was kind of like halfway through the sort of conversation pit. I think like 25 minutes in, really, where I was just kind of like, you know, I'm kind of feeling like John Carpenter, like I'm having Thing flashbacks. And I kind of wish in some ways that in this idea being a love letter and an homage to like the late 70s, early 80s kind of horror style, like not necessarily slasher, but other explorations of horror besides the single killer stalking its prey. Like there is a lot of mix of that, of the psychology of characters trying to make sense of the world that they're in, and how do we solve that problem as something is continuously encroaching on them, whether they know it or not. And I think either, unless it was these like last 10 minutes of just like how it goes down with the alien, where like what we said, it kind of felt like, and now we just threw something in there. You fumbled the bag a little bit, but I wish it was either kind of sprinkled in just a little bit more throughout, that there is really something here that should not be here, that is creating some form of a disturbance, or that we reach this point of no return, and that is where it becomes a massacre of some sort.
All you have to do is put the weird space rock in the middle of the conversation pit. So that's like an element of the plot from early on, and like maybe things start to unlock as they do more drugs. Like I should stop myself from like attempting a rewrite or anything, because what do I know? I'm just a fucking like dork in Maryland. It's whatever. Like I'm not the
Please do not do a bunch of strange substances back to back.
yeah.
This is not an endorsement.
All I'm saying is there needs to be an element of tension to me introduced a little earlier, even if it's not the main focus.
We at the Liberal Artist Podcast do not condone the use of drugs unless it makes you cool. But no,
damn, he got us.
In all seriousness,
don't do cocaine.
I think don't do illegal drugs, please.
Please.
A long time ago, I watched, maybe it wasn't that long, maybe it was only a year or two ago, I watched an interview with the game directors of the horror game Resident Evil.
Woo-hoo.
And they were
Those
talking
are going to be
about-
some interesting people, aren't they?
No, they're just normal guys. They're just dudes.
They're just dudes, from my understanding. Yeah.
Junji Ito syndrome.
Yeah, they're just homies. But
I mean, again, the best horror makers are just dudes.
But he was talking about the intent and how to design a monster, and he said something that really stuck with me. It was something with thought, something with intention is always scarier than something that's just a monster. And I think as far as the horror aspect of this episode, that's what was missing. Right. Yeah. There was no intention behind this monster. It just was, and it showed up and it killed everybody.
I'm just a guy.
Like to Gibby's point, like if you have the egg there, for us as audience, give us some form of film language that this thing is not just a simple, this is not just a space rock. Something's fucking wrong with this.
Or the rich guy, Lionel Lannister. We've gone this whole time not talking about his name. Lionel Lannister, if he intentionally
it's
put
not even
everybody,
his name, it's Lionel Lassiter.
Lassiter. Jesus, whatever. If there was some intention behind it, he was putting them in front of this rock knowing what was going to happen, or having an idea of what was going to happen, or even being like, haha, you losers, you're gonna tell me what to do. Not, we've been testing this thing for years and now it decides to explode on people. Not earlier.
Giving the audience, like, leave your characters clueless as shit. That's the whole point. But give your audience just the fractionist of suspicions and drip that along that something is not right. Let that suspense hang over us sitting out here watching this, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Which they did. It's just what the not right thing ended up being was a total non sequitur.
Yeah.
There's an old Alfred Hitchcock video where he talks about like shock and suspense that I think is fitting for this. If an audience is watching characters on screen in a car and a bomb goes off in the trunk and it explodes.
Right. We know there's shock. A bomb in the trunk, quote.
Well, that's if we don't know there's a bomb in the trunk. If it just explodes,
it just blows up.
That's shock. Okay. And now it's over. But if we know from early on that there's a bomb in the trunk and it's ticking and it's going to blow up, people are more engaged because that's suspense. And I think we're just kind of missing that.
Yeah.
And then we get the Walter White me screaming through the car window meme. Stop! There's a bomb in the back of the car. You gotta stop the bomb.
Don't snort that cocaine, Eric.
Last episode, the murmuring.
Oh wait, no. Do we have any final thoughts on the viewing before we abrupt transition out of here with a bad
I think
meme?
we said it, right?
Okay.
We were just memeing on it.
Yeah.
Like that's that.
We were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have last thoughts,
one.
Kaylie?
I can't believe we're already here.
Do you have something burning?
No, it just felt it felt like we cut the legs out from that segment. We just went next
just
one.
like they cut the legs out from that episode, the murmuring. The last of the stories, it's 1951 to ornithologist. That's bird doctors for people like me who had to look up what an ornithot. Nope, bird doctors who had to look up what that word means. They go off into whatever on some really nice lake house. Lady died in that lake house and her spooky. Yeah, somewhere where white folks live at. Lady and her kid died in that lake house, and there's spooky ghost haunting. Meanwhile, these two had a kid die, and they're going through that. Same thing with this one. There are two stories here, and for me personally, I didn't need the ghost story, right? I feel like, because you have a husband and wife who both have the same passions but can't find intimacy because they had this tragedy happen with them, which is losing a child right after childbirth. I am much more interested in that story and seeing that play out than also having, and a spooky ghost helps her cope with it. And I'm like, brother.
Okay.
With
this one, I know that the autopsy is the best one of the bunch. I think this one is my favorite because it's tonally and story-wise hits me emotionally because it's a story that is so ground in empathy. It reminds me a lot of another Guillermo del Toro movie that I watched years ago called El Orfanato.
Hellboy. Sorry.
Yes.
Which is like about a woman who runs an orphanage for abandoned special needs children, trying to find her trying to find her son that's gone missing. And like, I actually like the inclusion of the supernatural elements in this one because it acts as a parallel in some ways to Nancy's struggles. I think she can only address her own problems not through like the ways that Edgar is trying to connect with her, but by helping somebody else to unlock that ability to like settle the spirits and everything. And I personally really like having it because it is spooky to have things go flying everywhere, for her to be scared in the middle of the night, to see like this drowned like 9-year-old boy that like, I think a lot of it is very traditional and things that we've seen before, but because it relies on some of our expectations that can, in my personal opinion, increase some of the tension. Like it feels very like Del Toro in its stylings, which is personally why I like it. And I think it's also carried very well by the performances. Essie Davis and Andrew Lincoln, I think, are fantastic in this because you can tell like that they've been trying to work through this for a long time, but Nancy's had her walls up for so long, and Edgar's been trying to just like break against them and, you know, crash into them for so long to try to break it apart, and it's just not working, and she has to find this on her own and help somebody else before she's able to address her own issues. I find it very human, and I find it so easy to connect to personally. And I really like the pacing in this too, because like you get her slowly figuring this mystery out while he's also trying more and more to break down the walls that she's put up, while she's also hitting new walls of trying to figure out this mystery with the caretaker not wanting to give her anything. And all the while there's sprinklings of the spiritual world that are coming in.
Question.
Like
First, shout outs to the director Jennifer Kent. She's the one who directed it and did all that stuff. Second, do you think you would have enjoyed this as much if Nancy had died in the end?
That's an interesting question. To what purposes of the plot do you think it would have served if Nancy
I'm going to use
died?
this as a transition piece to something else I wanted to talk about. I do not like horror. And watching who would have guessed? No, but it's something I've known for a while. But, you know, like sitting down and watching 8 hours of horror by myself. When I don't enjoy something, I always I try my damnedest to use it as an opportunity, not just to get like salty and frustrated, but as an opportunity to say, okay, what don't I like? What don't I like about it? And what are the consistent things that have to be there? As for these pieces for horror, I noticed 3 consistent aspects that I'm like check mark. That's what makes it horror. Number 1 is desperation. There has to be other people would also call that motivation or whatever, but that's the prime motivator, right? And it has to be relatively extreme for the person to continue to engage in whatever bullshit they happen to be engaging with. Number 2 is isolation. The stories that have the most success at making you feel whatever you're supposed to feel with horror, scared, tense, whatever, usually have a person facing the threat by themselves.
There's nobody else.
That can get them out of it. They have to do. Yeah. They have to do the thing.
In space, no one can hear you in space.
Yes. And number 3, is death, because there has to be death. This sounds so fucking lame to say it out loud, but death is the ultimate consequence, and that's kind of what they always want you to land on, because it's like once this thing gets you, it is over for you, bud. It's the end. It's Jover.
Game over, man.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me that this story, and it's the reason why I asked that question. This story in particular only checks 2 of those boxes. It doesn't check the third. And my theory is the reason why this one feels satisfying is the same as the viewing, just in a different sense. Whereas it feels like there's a victory at the end, right?
The autopsy.
Yeah, the autopsy. I apologize. Not the viewing. There is no victory at the end. Of the viewing. Viewing is mid, It's to say it's similar to the end of the autopsy, where yes, our main character at the end of the autopsy, what's his name? Dr. Winters. Dr. Winters dies, but he gets one over the extraterrestrial, right? Whereas this, we assume Nancy gets to talk to Edgar. She finds peace.
She finds relief
and talk to Edgar about and they get to move on, right? So my question is, do you think you would enjoy this as much if it checked all three of those boxes?
I would argue in a little bit of a way that it already does, in that, like, you know, it's they're dealing with the consequences and the ramifications of their child having died. And I know that's off screen and pre all of this, but
I would say that breaks the rule, because it has to have I would say the death has to happen to either our main character or characters we've seen.
Well, you still kind of get that with, like, the little boy and the mother. You get the peaceful
they're already
death
dead
in, like, well, but their spirits are restless.
That's not a death though.
I don't know. Like, I think you get the peaceful death out of the little boy, and you get the restless.
Is it horror if the death is peaceful?
But that's the thing. I don't know if there needs to be. I think there's a branch in that category. I think it could be death, or at the very least, it is a trauma of some form. Whether that is pre the events being explored, or afterwards, or during, like, whatever, that sometimes the death creates a ripple effect of a trauma that consumes the main characters who have to go on living without this person. Or that it is something so psychologically disturbing to their day-to-day that it becomes a horrific event without necessarily, like, maybe they feel that death is looming, and that's certainly how Nancy starts to feel in some of these moments.
Let me modify my question. Would you enjoy this story if Nancy didn't get a happy ending?
I think if Nancy doesn't get a happy ending, I don't think you have the story necessarily, because the purpose of the story is being able to confront your grief and confront something that is just unimaginable pain by helping somebody else. Like, I don't think that I don't necessarily know if I agree with you with your statement that, like, horror has to, like, end with a death, because sometimes, unless you just turn, like, your monster movie into a sequel machine or something, sometimes the main characters just get away from the monster. They beat the monster at the end. Like Terminator, Sarah Connor, like, defeats
Terminator isn't a horror movie.
Some people
not.
would
No, it's
okay.
not.
I feel like it was made at the time to be a horror movie, and it has slowly fallen out of being a horror movie.
Your argument is Alien. Your argument is Alien.
Alien, she gets away with it. The Thing, maybe.
I see that. But there is a lot of death in those, right? And there's a lot of main characters who do die in there.
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need death, but I think you have to have, like, fear associated with it, because I'm not sure there is, like, I don't know if you could do fear in horror that wasn't related to death. I think death has to be an element, but I don't know if it necessarily
there's
has
the perceived
to be the
threat of a bodily consequence, whether or not that's actually true. Your character, your main character, like, I think of, it's been years since I've watched this movie, so I don't remember if there's actually death surrounding it in some form, but the Babadook is very psychological. A monster is coming after me, and I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
While also grappling with, like, traumas of parenthood, like that the mom character is struggling to deal with her special needs son.
I wouldn't know.
Like,
fun fact, the Babadook, also directed by Jennifer Kent. Shout out to
Well,
them.
how about that?
Then this explains a lot of the why I was kind of getting those vibes from this in certain moments of like, this is still terrifying. It can still be scary as shit because you don't know what these ghosts want or what they can do to you.
They can only communicate so much for so long. And you also have the element of like the birds,
The birds.
the birds and the murmurings that they see, that they are, shepherds of dead spirits,
So,
as Del Toro talks about.
Another element of a lot of these stories, and I mentioned that I would talk about it later, so now is later. But
It's later.
another
arrived.
element of some, not all, of these stories is you tell the story and then the thing happens, and the point of it is, and wasn't that spooky? Which for me, I personally say, yeah, so what? You know what I mean?
But that's part of the history of scary stories.
Exactly.
Like, that's part of the history of horror is just, man, that'd be fucking weird, right?
Understand, I started this statement with, I do not like horror. Right.
Sure.
I don't know what happened in there, but it got fucking
we
crazy.
used horror as a vehicle to either teach children morals or teach society morals to some extent, usually as children, or to explore abstract ideas that didn't necessarily fit into other forms of storytelling.
And those tend to be my least favorite ones. The Viewing, Pickman's Model, kind of sort of The Outside, though I liked The Outside. All of those, Lot 36 as well. All of those were just kind of like, and isn't that crazy? And I was like,
wouldn't that be fucking wild?
And I was like,
But again, I mean, look at the Twilight
on to
Zone,
the
look at
next
Black
one.
Mirror. Like, that's we still do it. Like, it's not just these old source materials. We still just do it because it's that like, oh, that'd be horrible.
and my point is, I personally don't, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just say it in simple words. I personally don't like it. Right. It's not.
That's
for me.
fair to say, I think.
Again, maybe it's my brain be like, I need moral plays of heroes.
Make it make sense.
Right. Where's my wheel of morality? I need it to turn.
Wheel of morality, turn,
Right.
turn.
Punishment.
Well, not even necessarily punishment, just payoff. Right.
Just what's the lesson for today?
Yeah. Or what was the point of this story? Not, wasn't that fucking crazy? It's like, no.
Every story's got a lesson.
Wait, what's the lesson of Halloween? Is it just that Jamie Lee Curtis fucking kicks ass?
That's always been the lesson.
I've never seen Halloween.
Bo, you can't admit that. What if she hears?
We're never gonna get her on our podcast now.
No, she has to play me a Street Fighter 6 1v1. Bring it on. I haven't played Street Fighter in a couple months, and Tekken's actually about to come out, so I'm like, brother.
I mean, it's fine. You guys will be able to talk about the One Piece live action and
she
give your thoughts.
plays Street Fighter, but so it has to be Street Fighter. But Jamie Lee Curtis, if you want to play some Tekken, hit me up. You know where I'm at. Let's run.
It has been
run
0 episodes since we invited Jamie
We
Lee
need
Curtis.
a counter
onto-
on somebody's wall of just.
Every time I ask
So
her.
there's a quote that I want to bring up from an interview that Del Toro did about Cabinet of Curiosities and talking about horror. But I think I want to like wrap up this segment before we talk about like more broad horror stuff.
We already are talking about broad horror stuff.
It's
So
too
we
late.
are. Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure because you didn't do, hey, final thoughts.
Yeah. That's what I was waiting for on the last one. I was waiting for the signal.
I'm an enigma. Wouldn't that be spooky if I just moved on to the next subject?
So Del Toro says, I believe there's a simple rule that I found to be truth after 58 years in this world. Hatred and fear are mirrors. Love is windows. Every time you hate somebody, it's a mirror for them. Your fear of somebody is a mirror. And I think we do see like that quote reflected in a lot of these stories. There's hatred in not understanding, hatred in the unknown, but we find windows in empathy and in sympathy for other people, you know, and I think that gets reflected through a lot of this, and like a lot of like his work outside of this project as well. Like, I think he's a really interesting artist because he's not the guy that just goes, "Woo, wasn't that spooky?" He goes, "Hey, fascism in Spain was extremely detrimental to the human spirit. Let's talk about that with spooky monsters."
Well, and that reminds me, I went to an academic conference.
Ooh.
I went and talked with theater scholars.
I went to college.
I went to college. No, but in one of the sessions was a whole group of folks talking about the monsters and the monstrous utopian, and one of them, like, running this whole panel is Michael Chemmers, who is like the leading voice in theater performance scholarship on monsters in theater. Mike. And in this panel, one thing that people kept coming back to, mentioning a name that I can't remember now, but somebody had said in performance scholarship or some other form of like socio-psychological scholarship that disgust comes from a form of empathy. That the only way that you can be disgusted by something is to see either something that you recognize or something of yourself within that. And I think that that is something that Del Toro like absolutely like does time and time again in his horror, that is such a coming from a place of empathy, and whether that is truly like empathy in its absolute like connective form, or something that generates a negative response because there is something that we recognize within the monster, within the horror, that we don't like either about society, about someone we know, about ourselves, whatever that may be. But he comes at such a very people emotional, like empathetic centric focus that I feel like is a very obvious approach to making scary movies that not a lot of other creators do. It is always, let's go for big blood, let's go for big scares, let's go for the scariest makeup. And
I'm not going for laughs, I'm going for gasps.
Fuck, man. Y'all both said like crazy profound shit to end the episode, and now I have to think of something.
Well, we can give you a minute.
No,
there.
don't say
like,
anything more profound. You're going to make me look bad.
We'll stall and say something dumb and water it down.
We'll make it harder.
We got too serious on the pod.
Gibby, say your last thing.
With what you said, Kaylie, I think it's interesting because something like The Outside, even though, you know, the main character is going way further than anything that she ever should, Stacy is understandably driven. She wants to be part of like this group, and she'll do anything to do it. I think the audience can empathize with her for that. Maybe not to the point of axing her husband in taxidermy.
But wouldn't that be weird if she did?
Would it be crazy?
Versus like something like The Autopsy. I think it's kind of the inverse in that the alien is incapable of empathy because it sees itself as such a higher life form than any human. Like, it sees itself beyond, and that's what makes it scary, because it cannot level with us as we are just cattle to it. And I think it's interesting how the series plays with that. And then, you know, hates a mirror, lot 36, he's racist.
Yeah.
he hate. That's it for him. That's the depth of
secret occult Nazi monster time.
All right, tag in, Bo. Say some profound shit.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Pacific Rim fucking slaps.
Yeah. Hell fucking yeah.
Thanks, Guillermo.
That's always true.
And that has been this episode of the Liberal Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Don't stop being spooky.
Spooky Thanksgiving.
Yeah, never stop being spooky. God damn it.
There's nothing scarier than Black Friday deals.
Oh, God.
There's not even any Black Friday deals. That's what's scary.
That shit started like 2 weeks ago. I'm angry.
But all they've done is go, hey, here's 20% off a thing
Capitalism.
that's $70.
Capitalism.
Thanks.
Capitalism.
Please follow us on Instagram at libartistpod. Let me get our stuff right.
Yeah.
Join us next time when we begrudgingly trade our pumpkins for Santa hats.
You can't make me.
I don't want to.
I've got menorahs. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
We're doing dreidel. Let's go.
Yeah.
Hanukkah time.
Peace.
The Liberal Artists Podcast premieres every other Thursday on your favorite podcasting platform. The show is hosted by Bodio, Kaylie Horowitz, and Andy Gibson. You can find the show at LiberArtistsPod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks to White Hot for performing the theme song Reflect, which can be found on freebeats.io. Now, I'm off to go exploring, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find a sheep that I can call my own. Good day.
Editor Gibby, play Shy by Epperly.
Okay, Editor Gibby isn't just fucking Siri, okay? He's a living man.
Editor Gibby, what are the directions from LA to Boston? How long is that drive?
That drive is going to take you at least 36 hours, but if you get on the road right now,